Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Quranic.com. Today is Tuesday the 9th of February 2021 and I'm going to be continuing with my sort of mini series on the surahs between Surah 50 and the end of the Qur'an. If you've been through my 7-hour presentation on the mysterious letters, you'll know why I'm so enthusiastic about this particular part of the Qur'an. If you haven't, well, you can just sort of come with us anyway, and we'll just get straight into it. Now, what we're going to be looking at today is Surah 63. So here goes. I'm going to be reading from what is going to be the final edition of this long piece of work of updating the Quran, a complete revelation, which I hope to release in the next couple of months. It's moving along great, and that's my main focus at the moment, as is the God protocol. So, but we're moving fast now. I'm glad that to be seeing the end of the sort of the end of the road on that one. But for now, I'm just going to be using a printed copy, and so we'll just jump straight into it. Okay, so this is Surah 63. It's quite a short surah, and we'll just begin. When the waverers come to thee, they say, "We bear witness that thou art the messenger of God, but God knows that thou art his messenger, and God bears witness that the waverers are liars." Now, just sort of stop there. I've got some notes that I'd like to bring to your attention. Now, if you're new to my channel, you won't sort of know the tenor in which I treat what I call brand Islam. Brand Islam, by brand Islam, what I mean is I mean, all religions are a form of brand. I mean, if you were to take Christianity, for example, if you read the Bible from beginning to end, if you'd never encountered any church or synagogue, you'd be hard pressed to if you were asked to think of a religion based on that book. And if you hadn't had any prior experience of it, let's say, for example, you'd grown up in, I don't know, in the jungles of Borneo or something, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with a religion that looks either like any of the various flavors of Judaism or of Christianity, for that matter. Now, I'm not saying that all religions are terrible and evil necessarily, but I am saying that, like Coca-Cola and Marmite and Tesla cars, religions are a form of a brand, and and Islam is it's actually several brands, but it's promoted in the West as one thing. You read the Quran, therefore you must believe this religion. I don't see it that way. In fact, I see it quite the inverse is true. And much of my work has been piecing together or reverse engineering, really, the religion, and to understand that in a lot of places, this religion and this book, which it claims as its foundational scripture, they're incompatible. They just, the one is contradicted by the other. Now, in this case, you see, if you, as I do, I come from a Christian background, a Christian culture, and the reason why I mention that is because, I think once you've experienced one religion, as it were, you kind of, it's not like you've experienced them all, but they all do have some sort of points in common, a bit like brands of car. Once I'm not saying a Tesla is necessarily like a Trabant, but there are some points which of similarity. They have wheels and they have engines and so on. So that there are some points of comparison. Now, from the brand of, or the particular flavor of Christianity that I came from, the idea was that in order to approach God, you had to go through Jesus, and Jesus, depending on who you ask and depending what kind of time of day it was, Jesus was anything between either God on one hand or a prophet on the other. The truth is that the Christian scriptures have several versions, and actually the Bible isn't a book, it's a library, and as in any library, there are quite a lot of varying opinions, and the idea that somehow this whole book, this Bible, whatever we mean by that, and that's another whole topic, is somehow coherent, and it all can kind of match together. This is just not true. Now, one of the reasons why I was impressed by the Qur'an when I first read it was because one of the reasons was that it does hold together, and it does. It answered, at least to my satisfaction, questions that I'd never been able to get answered within Christianity. I read it, as people who know my channel will know, just as a book. I've read quite a few books in my life, and I read it as a book, and I found that I had answers to things like, for example, the difference between works and grace, which in Christianity is a whole problem. I mean, going back to Pelagius versus Augustine, whether, because they need Jesus to be special, and so, but if he's that special, then why do you need to do anything afterwards? But then it's supposed to be that you're so grateful for being saved by grace that then you go and do the works. But is it a get out of jail free card? Yes, it is, but it isn't. Depending, and round and round you go. I was describing this to somebody quite recently. It's a bit like trying to cover like a 4 square meter area with a 3 square meter blanket. You're just never going to be able to do it, and that's the truth. Now, when I came to reading the Qur'an, I found that I had answers to this like quite quickly. For example, whoso believeth in God and the last day and does do good works, he has his reward. Now there you are. That's the whole of that big problem, that big Christian problem, which they still haven't worked out to this day, solved in one go. So I was impressed, having spent, I don't know how long it was, maybe 15 years, wrestling with these questions. But I didn't know anything about the Islamic brand of religion at that point. So I just read this book and was really, really impressed. However, I educated myself on the religion, and I wasn't impressed by that at all, to be perfectly honest. Because I'd seen one religion, once you have seen one, you kind of seen it. You've seen most of them, because the thematics just kind of repeat. All that to say, the kind of entry statement in Christianity, of course, Christianity is a very broad church. Depends, who you ask, but if you're one of these sort of prayer of salvation type people, is that after you've asked Jesus into your heart, whatever you mean by that, thereafter you're saved, except you kind of feel that you're not, and everyone else is pretending that they are, and you don't feel that. But actually, it seems that this is the only, this you have to kind of, it's like an intelligence tax. The only way to God is to go through and pay this intelligence tax. Well, there's something similar in the Islamic brand as well, and the intelligence tax in this case is that there's a set phrase that you have to say, which is that you bear witness that there is no God but God, and this other thing, you add this other thing. I was really surprised, because I'd read the Quran, I'd read it on its own, and then when I met Muslims and they said that you have to say this thing, and I'm saying, but I've just read this book. This book says you make no distinction between prophets, and your entry phrase, your intelligence tax to enter into this religion, to join this brand, is you have to kind of go against the obvious tenets of this book. I was quite surprised. Anyway, this is the only part you can find in the Qur'an which holds the second part of what is called the Shahada, this statement of faith. And the statement of faith is actually antithetical to the book, which the brand Islamists hold as their foundational scripture, which I find really odd. So, but this is it. So going back, I'm just going to press some more buttons here. Here we are. When the waverers come to thee, they say, we bear witness that thou art the messenger of God. Now, this is the only place in the Quran where you can find the second half of this so-called Shahada. That you bear witness that there is no God but God, and you bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. You don't find this. You'd think if this was like central to how God has set up this religion, that it would be like, you'd have perhaps Al-Fatiha, and then the Surah 2 first line, okay, Qul, and everyone has to say this thing. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And you'd think, okay, right, well, clearly this is how you do it. This is how you say it. This is what this religion requires. But no, it's not there. It isn't there. And because I'd read this book, I read it really, really carefully. because again, going back to religions, once bitten, twice shy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So having been through a religion experience, I wasn't in the market for a load of old rubbish. I read a load of different stuff over many years, but when I read the Qur'an, I was getting answers to all of these questions. But what I wasn't finding was this religion. But I have found this the only place, and you may, in fact, you should verify this. You can't find this anywhere else. So you can't find the second part of this Shahada anywhere else. So isn't it interesting, just looking at the page again, when the waverers come to the, and I'll get to in a moment why I say waverers. Munafiqun is usually translated hypocrites and so on, but there's a reason why I have a hermeneutic which is what I consider Quranically based, and one of those mechanisms is what I call pantextual analysis, where I look across the whole Qur'an to find where and how words operate in particular places. And the other is what I might call, I'm going to have several kind of parts to my toolbox, but another part is what I call Quranic definitions. So quite often you'll find a word is introduced, and then it says, and these are those people, they do X, they do Y, they do Z. And you read that and think, that's a definition, this is a dictionary. So I approached the book, especially a book which says that it is it's from God and it's perfect and it's preserved. So would you not go to that book for its own definition? So that's what I did, and I found that in some places those definitions comport with what the traditionalist says, but words change their meaning. They change their meaning quite quickly. One of the examples I like to give is the word gay. Now, my grandfather's generation would have, if you'd said he's someone so and so is gay, they would have thought he was blithe, happy, generally of a sunny disposition. That's what it meant. Okay, not what it means anymore. It's gone from that to meaning basically not basically, it means sodomite. It's a sort of nice word for sodomite. So words can really change their meaning, and they can change them quite quickly, especially if there's an agenda behind that. Going back to my brand thing, one thing I did learn in Christianity is that religion is a very potent form of mind control. If you can get people believing that somehow God wants them to do X, Y, or Z, or doesn't want them to do X, Y, or Z, especially if X, Y, or Z includes using your own brain, then you've got people in basically in something of an intellectual headlock. I wasn't much interested in that, and once I got out of it, I'd made a pact with myself: never again am I going to do this. Now, a lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater. In my case, I've come to the conclusion that I'm basically built to believe in God. I'm just made this way. I have the God-believing gene. People tell me that they're atheists, they don't have the God-believing gene. I believe them. I'm not going to argue with them, but I do, and this is me. So when I've read the Qur'an, as I keep saying, I found these answers, and I happen to have a literature degree, so I'm used to reading books in quite a, I'm as though I'm going to write an essay about it. So I'm kind of remembering what's happening, or at least the key themes, looking for themes, looking for this, looking for that. And it seemed to me after reading this book, and I read it a couple of times before I went and sort of found any so-called Muslims, and I could see that it had these answers, it had these kind of definitions locked into it. I could also see, reading in translation, that there were what I call sort of sore thumb words. You'd be reading along, and then you get this. You could just feel that there was something just a bit wrong with this bit. And I noticed that it was invariably where the notes were driving you to this religion. And after a while, I realised, you know what? And I read a load of books. I've sort of mentioned this before. I didn't sort of suddenly decide I'm now going to explain to the Muslim world why they don't understand the Qur'an. No, I went to an Islamic bookshop and spent loads of money asking them, saying, what do I need to read? What do I need to read to understand this? And they loaded me up with loads of books, and I read them, and I realised they don't have it. They don't have it, and I knew that they didn't. I could see, if somebody's got something, not ain't got it. And if they had got it and they could explain it, I'd have been fine, great, the work's been done. I'm going to go and have a decent career in something else. But they hadn't got it, and I if they had, I'd be doing something else, quite frankly. But anyway, going back to this, why I call this the waverers is because of how the Quran treats this word. And even in this surah, we have a taste of this. And so I'm just going to read a little bit further, and then I'm going to go to another surah briefly to give you a bit of a broader view of this. So, when the waverers come to thee, they say, we bear witness that thou art the messenger of God. Again, remember, who is saying this? Is it the believers? No, it's the waverers, or if you wish, the hypocrites. That's what the traditionists will give that. Oh, hypocrite isn't so far away from waverer, but I have a reason why I think this means waverer. But God knows that thou art his messenger, and God bears witness that the waverers are liars. Now that seems pretty full on to me. Anyway, let's continue. They have taken their oaths as a cover. Now, what does it mean if you take oath as a cover? It really means that we have some other commitment that prevents us from following this. A previous commitment. We don't live in a society which is fundamentally hemmed about by oaths. We use contracts and commitments. So they use their oath as a cover. They're saying, I have a previous commitment. That's why I can't follow this. My experience when I talked to Muslims after having read all these books was, it seemed to me that this, I'm not saying that everybody who's a traditionalist Muslim is a bad person or anything like that, but I did notice a tendency, as I had seen within Christianity, of when asking people why they're not following this book that we're supposed to believe, it's because it doesn't comport with the religion. Now, they can't exactly come out and say that because people feel, that the pressure of the tension there, especially if you're claiming a book as your foundational scripture. But that's what it really boiled down to. It's like we have an authority. I follow that authority. I have a pre-existing commitment to follow this authority, whichever be it is, or madhab or whatever. And it came down to they'd taken an oath. Well, what oath was it they'd taken, actually? Well, it seemed to me, anyway, that there's this other oath, this commitment to this religion, which I would say the latter half of which we've already read. This is how it came across to me as somebody coming in completely from the outside. So, again, I as I know that there are many decent Christians, Catholics and Protestants, I know this for a fact. I'm not just saying this to kind of seem to be nice. I do know it. It's true, and I can't make any sense of what their claims for Jesus. Doesn't make sense to me. But they have to kind of work out their salvation in fear and trembling for themselves. I'm responsible for me. I have to do me. By the same token, I know that there are traditionalist Muslims who live righteous and good lives. However, for me, knowing what I know, if I were to just sort of bury my head in the sand and go along to get along, and all of that, and you can be sure that the Islamic world, it would be very nice to somebody like me. The white boy, he's accepted Islam, all of that. But it's nonsense, and I don't believe it. I don't believe that it arises naturally out of the book that they claim as their foundational scripture. I can see that it doesn't. And that being the case, am I just going to follow this kind of hodgepodge of stuff because I need a religion? No, I'd rather go to the pub. Personally speaking, I'm either interested in the truth or I'm not. And if I'm not, I'm going to go and do something else. I'm certainly not going to just sort of mess about, kind of playing with paper boats or something, because I can't find anything better to do. So They have taken their oaths as a cover. Then they turned away from the path of God. Evil is what they did, for it is that they believed, then denied. Now I'm going to stop here. Now this is a kind of a repetition of the reason why I treat munafiqun as waverers. I'm going to just sort of change gears, as Alex Jones would have said, and switch to a slightly different part and read this. Now we're going to move to Surah 4, verse 138. And I'm just going to read this through. Okay. Bear thou tidings to the waverers, that they have a painful punishment. Those who take the false claimers of guidance as allies rather than the believers. Do they seek with them power and glory? But power and glory belong to God altogether. And he has sent down upon you in the writ, that when you hear the proofs of God denied and mocked, sit not with them until they discourse vainly concerning a subject other than that. Then would you be like them. God will gather the waverers and the false claimers of guidance into Gehenna altogether. Those who watch and wait. Now I believe this is a definition. Those who watch and wait with regard to you. Then if there be a victory for you from God, they say, were we not with you? But if there be for the false claimers of guidance a portion, they say, did we not gain mastery over you, but defended you against the believers? And God will judge between you on the day of resurrection, and God makes not for the false claimers of guidance any path against the believers. Now, these people who say, were we not with you, and then we were with you, basically they're waiting to see who wins. That's what they're looking for. Just excuse me a second. They're looking to see who wins. Now, is that a hypocrite? Yeah, I guess it is sort of. It is a type of hypocrisy. But I would say it's wavering. They're wavering on the edge. They can't really make a decision one way or other. Now, there is a difference between hypocrisy and wavering. And it's not a huge difference. It's not as big a difference as the difference between blithe and happy on the one hand and a screaming sodomite on the other. But it is a difference, and it matters. This is another thing which I noticed. I was just sort of turning into a bit of a catalogue of recriminations against some of the first Muslims that I met. I don't mean it that way, but let's just go with it. When I went, after having read all these books and assuming that I could find people who could really explain their religion to me, one of the criticisms against me was, why do you care what these words mean? Well, what does it matter to you? And I couldn't fathom this response. It seemed to me like it felt to me as if what was happening was really something like a time tax. Like basically, and I'm talking about Muslims in the West, basically they just, their parents had gone to the West, they'd grown up there, they had Western educations, but they had probably more Eastern cultures, at least to a certain extent, at home. But other than that, they were kind of totally westernized. And it seemed to me that what they really wanted to do was kind of keep both. They were trying to basically straddle two horses at the same time. And the religion was just kind of like a time tax. It's a time tax. It's like pay the minimum amount, and then I can just, chase women or do what all, what the British guys were doing with kind of, I've paid my kind of family tax, my tithe, as it were, on my culture, and now I can just get on with what I really want to do. You see, I didn't work like that. It's not, that's what wasn't where I was coming from. When I was looking for something, is like, if it's true, then it's really true, then follow it 100%. And if it's not true, why bother with it? And so for me, words do matter. Any contract, and if you read Al-Fatiha, with engaged brain, it's a contract. Believe me, if you're going to borrow money, or you're going to invest money, or you're going to lend money, or you're going to, buy an expensive fridge, most people will read that quite carefully. And if there are any ambiguities in the contract, then the time to ask is before you sign the contract, because a contract is made up of words, and words have meanings. And you can be, I don't want to get too much into this, but the ruling elite are very clear on what words mean. They use words in a very, very, very specific way that most of us don't understand. But they know what they mean, and they'll have a definition written down somewhere. So I am interested in the meaning of words. But if this book be from God and it be preserved and it is perfect, then surely this should be the place that we look to primarily for meanings. But that approach wasn't very popular, and so I realized after quite a long time, to be honest, I don't think this is very interesting to me, so I just decided to do it for myself. So that's really what I've been doing. Anyway, to continue, I just wanted to kind of go through Surah 4, that's verses 138 through 141, because as it says, those who watch and wait with regard to you, verse 141, then if there be a victory for you from God, they say, were we not with you? But if there be for the false claimers of guidance a portion, they say, did we not gain mastery over you, but defended you against the believers? You see, they want it both ways. Yes, it is a form of hypocrisy, but it's really a form of wavering. It's that kind of trying to cover both bases sort of thing. And I think that there is an important distinction, one which gives a colour or a certain nuance to other portions of the Qur'an. Anyway, that's enough on that. I'm going to just continue with this. Going back to Surah 63, which is the focus of today's video. Verse 3, for it is that they believed, then denied. You see, is that what a hypocrite does? No, I would say not. I would say it's what a waverer does. Then were their hearts sealed, and they understand not. And if you read the first few lines of Al-Baqarah, or maybe verse 7 or 8, something like that, خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ, God has sealed their hearts. And again, if you read that section from verse about 6 through to verse about 10, it says, and they perceive not. They don't know it. So that's why they're not admitting it to you. Okay, let's continue. Verse 4. And when thou seest them, their forms please thee. And if they speak, thou listenest to their speech as if they were propped up pieces of dry wood. They think every blast is against them. They are the enemy, so beware thou of them. May God curse them. How are they deluded? Now, I'm not sort of ascribing this to anybody in particular, but I would say that this is a pretty damning piece of text and should be a cause for sober thought for anybody who takes this book seriously. So that was verse 4. Now, I wanted to just, where are we? Yes, thou listenest to their speech. So as if they were propped up pieces of dry wood. Now this phrase, to my mind, would be rendered in a more natural idiom in English is to treat with kid gloves. You see, the Prophet, the recipient of the Qur'an, is being chided for basically taking too much time with these people and thinking that these are people to put his efforts into. They think every blast is against them. Now this is interesting. The word blast, all the way through the Qur'an, sayha is the word for the blast of, it's used, generally speaking, it's associated with the end of time, or with the destruction of a community, and the blast came upon them, and they were, in the morning as lying prone in their dwellings and so on. This word is used repeatedly through the Qur'an in the context of destruction. So I just think it's interesting. They think every blast is against them. They are the enemy. So beware thou of them. May God curse them. How are they deluded? And when it is said to them, Come, the messenger of God will ask forgiveness for you, they turn aside their heads. and thou seest them turning away, waxing proud. Now, the messenger of God, this is of course the trigger point for the traditionalist. He's conflated books written 200-300 years later by men who never knew the messenger of God, Muhammad, and who have collated hearsay and the hadith by definition. This isn't Sam Gerrans' wild-eyed conspiracy theory. The very genre itself of hadith, whether you like them or you don't like them, the fact is that they comprise two portions, and there's matan and isnad, and the isnad is so and so told so and so told so and so. Now that by definition is hearsay. It's not admissible in a court of law, certainly no court I've ever heard of. And yet this is apparently it's supposed to be, if you don't accept this hearsay, something which the messenger of God never saw, never put his seal of approval to, never read, if you don't accept that, then somehow you don't accept him. Well, no, what we have is the Qur'an, and in the Qur'an we have many dua which are, received by the messenger, which he did see, which he did recite, which he did know, which we can use. رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا آمَنَّا فَاغْفِرْ لَنَا ذُنُوبَنَا وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, and so on. There are many such dua, such appeals for forgiveness received by the Prophet Muhammad. These are true, and yet we've got all this other stuff that's been conflated with him, and you're an unbeliever if you don't trust all of these people who told people. As I say, once you've seen one religion, you kind of seen them all, and they all have lots of points of similarity. So let's continue. So quite often what you find is when you call like traditionalist Muslims to the Quran alone, they'll turn away because they think they're better than that. Anyway, that's just what I saw. I'm not saying it's true in all cases, and I know that there are genuine scholars amongst them. I know that there are genuine believers. I'm not denying that for a moment. It's just that the religion, the brand that I started off talking about, doesn't make any sense to me. If it did, that would be different. But it doesn't, and so I actually have to kind of go ahead and investigate on a basis that makes sense to me, because I will have to give account for that. You see, now if the people that I met for whom the contents of a contract, apparently the contract of their own eternal souls, makes no difference whatsoever, they'll just have to give account for themselves. I can't do them, nor can they do me. I have to do me. I have to give account for me. And so I understand it's not hugely important for a lot of other people, but I was just made with this awareness of my own mortality and a sense of urgency. And if I have attempted in my life to deny this and to cover it up, as it were, and I'm just not very good at it. So I think it was Emerson, in his wonderful essay Self-Reliance, there comes a time in every man's education where he's basically got to accept himself for what he is, and that's what I'm doing. If other people don't like it, well, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. Anyway, let's continue. Verse 6, it is the same for them whether thou askest forgiveness for them or hast not asked forgiveness for them. God will never forgive them. God guides not the perfidious people. Those are they who say, spend not on those with the messenger of God until they disband. And the word disband here, it has a military connotation. And to God belong the treasuries of the heavens and the earth, but the waverers understand not. They say, if we return to the city, the more honoured will drive therefrom the meaner. But to God belong power and glory, and to his messenger, and to the believers, but the waverers know not. Now that sounds pretty conclusive to me. It also sounds to me as if they rely upon their own assessment of their own prowess and so on. And often we read in the Quran about people who follow, they follow what they found their fathers upon. I found this to be the case in the two religions that I've had some experience of. And I think I'm not saying that everybody should agree with me. I mean, I have to agree with me, but I do think that the Qur'an says that God offered it upon the mountains, and they said no, and so on. But man has, because we have the ability to choose, we have a moral sense. We are culpable for the choices that we make. And part of what I've been doing over the last few years is fending off approaches from people, and they say, they're asking me these sort of kind of Renta-Muller kind of questions, and I just don't answer them because, it's a bit like the, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you can, feed him for life. It's really to do not fish but thinking. It's each of us is obliged to apply his mind to the best of his ability. Now, people seem to be terrified that it might result in some sort of division of thought. Well, I'm all right with that. I mean, I have to know why I think what I think. If people can look at my evidence, they may agree with me, or they may not agree with me. I mean, just because they have some feelings about what I've done, that doesn't mean anything to me. But actual evidence, if I'm wrong and I can be shown to be wrong, not just someone's got a lot of feelings, but actual evidence. And what I do is difficult. I will just say that it's not just a matter of scrabbling a couple of words together and throwing them in a hat and thinking, oh, there you are. There's no. It has to hang together in a three-dimensional way within the context of the whole thing. But if I'm wrong on something, fine. I'm happy to learn. But unfortunately, that's not kind of how brands work, because they're really more about hive mind things. And brand Islam, in my opinion, if you want my honest opinion, brand Islam in its more recent iterations, if I were gonna kind of look at a map and sort of point to where that had come from, I would think it's probably closer to London than it is to Mecca. But that's just me. Anyway, let's continue. It's not much to go now. Verse 9, O you who heed warning, let not your wealth or your children divert you from the remembrance of God, and whoso does that, it is they who are the losers. Now, I had a couple of points I wanted to say which is, the wider point often missed arising from this and similar statements is that we're not to let our desire to add to our wealth and our children lead us into wrong behaviour. Now, I've come across this a lot of times in my life from people who are in, let's say, dishonest lines of work, or, especially in the country that I live in government and so on. And the justification of it often is, well, I know I'm doing wrong, but, I've got children, I've got to get them through education, I've got to get them this, I've got to get them married, I've got to get them this, that and the other. So to my mind, this isn't just about acquiring more for oneself, but quite often, I think particularly men, or perhaps I just know this because I am a man, there's a temptation to justify sin because you've got children. And sort of what you're doing is basically kicking the moral payload down the road. That doesn't work. And let not your wealth or your children divert you from the remembrance of God. And I think this has several meanings. I mean, once you have children, you have to fight to read the Qur'an, to make the time to submit to God. Once you're married, it can be very difficult, and you have to fight for that. And just because you're married, just because you've got a wife, just you've got some children, you've got a husband or whatever it is, that personal responsibility that man took, insan, man in the generic sense of man or woman, took upon himself, that's to do with personal responsibility. So that's really what I'm about. If I kind of preaching anything, if you want to put it that way, I guess I'm sort of preaching the gospel of personal responsibility, of personal due diligence, and trying to lead to some extent, at least by example. Okay, we've just got 2 more verses to go. Verse 10, and spend of what we have provided you, before death comes to one among you, and he says, my Lord, hadst thou but delayed me to a near term, that I might give charity and be among the righteous. But God delays no soul when its term comes, and God is aware of what you do. Going back to the actions thing, the Pelagius versus Augustine problem of Christianity, which had plagued me really, and how the Qur'an solved that believe in God on the last day and do good works, have your reward. Man is, as far as we know, the only creature capable of understanding, of abstractualizing his own death, and understanding that even though he feels happy and healthy today, and everything's wonderful, let's say that one day he will die, and this is a fact. It's as they say, death and taxes, the only two certainties in life. I write when I read books. I write in the margins of them, and I was reading a book recently, and something sparked an idea, and I wrote at the top of the book, the day I die will be a day very much like today. And if you can hold this thought as you go through life, you understand that it's only what we invest, and that in the life to come that we really take with us. Does it mean we can't live well here? No, in fact, I would say it means you live better. For myself, since I made the conscious decision, come what may, cut off my old life, all the rest of it, and my wife and I sort of nailed our colours to the mast of this project and so on, I can say that life is much better. But will you go through testing on a regular basis? Yeah, sure you will. And that's just how it works. I don't know why it is that way. I get lots of messages that people, I want to serve God, but this, I want to do this, but that, or tell me how to do this. No, that's you've got to work that bit out now. And also, again, you've got to do you, haven't you? I mean, I know what I'm good at, or I hope I'm good at it, and I'm sticking with that. So, but outside of this, or outside of what I'm doing, I'm not really very good at anything else. I've just found that kind of bit that I'm fascinated by, and care enough about to do the best that I can. But outside of this, I don't know if I'd be that great at other things. Certainly at this point, for me, it's about priorities. If you only had 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, whatever it was, what would you do? Well, for me, the answer is what I'm doing right now. But that may not be the answer for you. In fact, let's hope it isn't, because there's no point duplicating each other. I think this is to wind this up. Religions kind of they tend to get people to feel that emulation and somehow some sort of standardization is an expression of virtue or piety. But ultimately, I think the accusation on the day of judgment for many people will be that they didn't really do them. And that's the way I see it. We are made, we are created with different ranges, different sets of skills, different interests, and human beings are designed to specialize. We're not fish. We need to specialize for society to work. So people come to me with oh, yo, bro, explain to me what I should do with my life. How would I know? Where would I? It's hard enough trying to work out what I had to do with my life. I'm sure as anything can't help you with that. Anyway, I hope this is of some use. I'm going to wind this up by saying that we're now at the 9th of February. Anybody who's listened this long to this video probably has an attention span. So, my work on the mysterious letters is on my channel. It's about 4 or 5 videos back from now. I think it came out about the 26th, something like that, of December 2020. It's still open for reasoned, intelligent feedback until the end of this month. Now, all that to say, feelings don't mean anything to me. I mean, my feelings don't mean a whole lot to me, but your feelings mean even less to me. So if you've got some feelings about it, it's probably not going to rock my world. But I think the logic behind it is solid. It does take a while to learn, but if you can find that any faults with it, again, it has to be, there's quite a high learning curve on it. But if you can find genuine faults on it, I'm open to it up until the end of this month. But it has to be, I'll spot immediately whether I know that subject to the point of banging my head against a wall. I really know it inside out. So if you haven't found something that you can demonstrate to me is wrong, if I see you don't get it, I'll know. I'll know immediately, which is fine. And if you've gone through it and you understood it, great. And if you've got nothing to say, that's fine too. But if you've spotted something, you think you can, say, here you said this, but there it's that. That's an error. Then I'm interested. I don't think there is one because I went through it, but you may see something that I don't. So that's open until the end of February. That's it for now. I hope everyone is well. I'm going to attempt to drop another video in the next week, but as I'm getting so close to finishing up the major task, which is finishing the second edition of the Qur'an, a complete revelation, we're very close to that. As you might see from my demeanor, that's the priority for me. And then it's finishing the God protocol. And then we can move to the next stage, God willing. So anyway, that's all for now. And I hope everyone's well. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right-hand corner. Or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Quranic Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Quran alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short. Eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.